We are again going to discuss the most pressing issue of the time, the Iran-Israel conflict, which has now grown into a full-fledged war. The question we are trying to find an answer to in today's discussion is whether the U.S. will become part of this war and attack Iran's nuclear sites, as reportedly and repeatedly requested by Israel. This is a crucial moment, and what we're looking to understand is the intricate web of considerations for all involved. You've asked us to explore the situation surrounding potential U.S. military action against Iran, particularly its nuclear facilities, amidst this, well, escalating conflict. We'll examine the capabilities at play, the shifting rhetoric, the delicate diplomatic efforts, and the significant political divisions shaping this very complex scenario. So, to set the scene, we really have to acknowledge the undeniable reality of a significantly escalated conflict. This isn't just about localized regional tensions anymore, is it? It's a conflict that has truly exploded, demanding our attention.
Absolutely. And what truly stands out here, I think, is the sheer scale of the American presence and preparation in the region. I mean, we're talking about more than 40,000 U.S. troops deployed throughout the Middle East. Commanders have put them on high alert at bases in key locations like the UAE, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. This isn't, a hypothetical exercise. This is a very tangible posture. It reflects these growing fears of a much wider war. It's a clear signal, really, of the U.S. recognizing the gravity and positioning itself for, well, whatever might come next.
And you can certainly feel that tension building, can't you? Israel has been pressing the White House quite insistently, it seems, to intervene and join its campaign against Iran. But if the U.S. were to step in, what are the immediate significant consequences American officials are most worried about?
Right. If we connect this to the broader picture, American officials are deeply concerned that direct U.S. involvement would almost certainly trigger widespread retaliatory actions. That's the big fear. You'd likely see pro-Iranian militias in Iraq and Syria, which, have a long history of targeting U.S. interests, attacking American bases there with renewed intensity. We'd also probably see the Iranian-backed Houthi militia in Yemen almost certainly resume striking ships in the Red Sea. That impacts global commerce, vital shipping lanes. And perhaps one of the most alarming prospects mentioned is Iran potentially starting to mine the Strait of Hormuz. Now, for you, the listener, just imagine this. The Strait of Hormuz is this critical choke point. A huge amount of the world's oil passes through it. Mining it could essentially trap American warships in the Persian Gulf, severely disrupt global energy markets. It escalates the crisis dramatically.
Okay, so given those immediate critical risks, the obvious question then becomes, what kind of military capabilities are we even talking about here, both from the U.S. side and in terms of Iran's potential retaliation?
Well, the U.S. has indeed been making very visible, very calculated preparations. It's quite clear. They've sent about, 3 dozen refueling aircraft to Europe. We're talking KC-135s and KC-46s, positioning them in places like Italy, Spain, Germany, Greece. Now, this isn't just moving planes around. It's establishing what's known as an air bridge, which is absolutely crucial for extending the range of long-distance bombers and assisting fighter jets. This bridge, for instance, would enable B-2 stealth bombers to fly nearly 7,000 miles from White Man Air Force Base in Missouri directly to targets. That's quite a reach. And on top of that, they're deploying advanced fighter jets like F-16s, F-22s, F-35s to the Middle East. It's a formidable air power commitment. This projection of force, it's about global reach, precision strikes, a capability few nations possess. It sends a very clear message about the U.S.'s unique ability to hit even fortified targets from huge distances.
And a crucial piece of this puzzle, the element that really shifts the dynamics, is the massive ordnance penetrator, the GBU-57. This is a 30,000-pound weapon, a behemoth, right? Capable of boring into deeply buried facilities like Iran's Fordo nuclear site. And what's critical for you to understand is that only an American B-2 bomber can carry this weapon. Israel simply doesn't have that specific capability.
Exactly. And Fordo isn't just any nuclear site. It's Iran's most heavily fortified enrichment center. It's built deep inside a mountain specifically to withstand the heaviest strikes. It's designed for that. Experts contend that any attack aiming to significantly damage it would need not just one bomb, but multiple waves of B-2s dropping these massive bombs down the same hole. That's an incredibly precise operation, executed by an American pilot and crew, which leads us to ask, how much actual damage would such a strike truly inflict? And maybe more importantly, how long would it genuinely delay Iran's nuclear program? U.S. officials have openly stated that Israel would undeniably need American help to cause significant damage to a facility like Fordo.
Okay, so we've covered the U.S. side. What about Iran? What are they preparing for in response to these heightened tensions and, well, potential threats?
Well, Iranian officials have made it very clear. They've prepared missiles and other military equipment for strikes on U.S. bases. They're not being subtle about it. Two Iranian officials actually went on record stating they would attack U.S. bases in the Middle East, specifically starting with those in Iraq, if the U.S. joined Israel's war. They also specified targeting any American bases in Arab countries that participate in an attack. It's quite specific. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, he underscored their resolve, stating, "Our enemies should know that they cannot reach a solution with military attacks on us." It's a strong declaration of intent to retaliate.
And they've certainly demonstrated the capability to act on such threats in the past, haven't they?
Indeed, they have. Iranian-backed groups have a documented history of harming Americans and disrupting regional stability. It's not just rhetoric. For instance, the Houthis. They have repeatedly attempted to strike American warships and have successfully hit commercial shipping, causing significant economic disruption. And more recently, remember January 2024, an Iranian-backed militia carried out that drone attack on a U.S. base in Jordan near the Syrian border, tragically killed 3 American soldiers. These incidents highlight that Iran's proxy network is a very real and capable threat, not just something they talk about.
Right. Now, beyond the formidable military hardware and these threats of retaliation, let's turn our attention to the diplomatic bans, especially from the U.S. side. Former President Trump's statements on Iran, for example, they've been varied, shall we say.
Yes, varied is one word for it. His stance has certainly been complex, sometimes contradictory. On one hand, you have him demanding Iran's unconditional surrender, issuing stark warnings to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Yet, at other times, he expressed confidence that a nuclear deal was easily within reach. He even sent that beautiful letter, as he called it, to the Ayatollah stating, "I don't want war, I want a deal." This kind of oscillating rhetoric, from maximum pressure to apparent openness, it begs the question, is there some middle ground here, something like coercive diplomacy?
Coercive diplomacy sounds intense, but it's basically using the threat of force or existing pressure to push for a diplomatic outcome, right? Like playing high-stakes chess, where every piece, military or political, sends a signal. So what would that actually look like in this context?
Well, it could involve giving Iran a brief period, a deadline maybe, to agree to specific terms. These might include things like a gradual end to all uranium enrichment on Iranian soil, maybe joining a regional consortium for nuclear power, essentially giving up a national capability for regional cooperation. However, while this specific U.S. proposal was publicly rejected by Iran, their foreign minister, Araghchi, did signal some openness to a deal. But, and this is a big but, with a very clear precondition if Israeli attacks ceased. His precise words were, apparently, it takes one phone call from Washington to muzzle someone like Netanyahu, which really highlights the intricate connection between the ongoing conflict and any potential diplomatic path forward.
So a very clear if on the table there. And speaking of preconditions and sticking points, what about the Fordo facility itself? We've talked about its military vulnerability, or rather its strength, but why is it such a persistent issue in these diplomatic discussions?
Yeah, what's really compelling here is that Fordo has been described as the crux of this thing by seasoned experts like Brett McGurk, who's worked on Middle East issues for several presidents. The thinking is, if Fordo continues enriching uranium, then many believe it offers not a strategic gain for those trying to curb Iran's nuclear program. Because this facility, it's their deep underground enrichment site, built to withstand heavy strikes and its continued operation. While it remains a key indicator of Iran's pathway to a potential nuclear weapon, its very existence and activity just complicates every single diplomatic effort. It symbolizes a core Iranian capability that others want to see dismantled or, rendered inert.
So what does this all mean for the U.S. internally, especially with such monumental decisions possibly on the horizon? Who truly holds the power to decide something of this magnitude? And what are the political divisions shaping that debate right now in Washington?
That's a huge question. The decision to launch a full-on military attack, it falls into this fascinating and frankly contested gray area. It's caught between the president's powers as commander-in-chief and the Constitution's mandate that only Congress can declare war. This isn't just legal theory. It's a deep constitutional tension that always seems to reemerge whenever a president considers unilateral military action. Historically, Congress declares war, but presidents, as commanders-in-chief, have often used force without a formal declaration, especially in perceived national security crises. This particular situation with Iran, it throws that fundamental power struggle into sharp relief. It's really reignited a long-dormant debate on Capitol Hill about presidential war powers.
And we're seeing some specific legislative efforts emerge aimed at addressing this, aren't we? People trying to reassert congressional authority.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Both House and Senate resolutions have been introduced. You've got Representatives Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, and Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, both strong voices on this. And Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat from Virginia, he's been very prominent too. These resolutions would basically require explicit congressional approval before U.S. troops could engage in offensive attacks against Iran. These efforts, and they are somewhat bipartisan, they underscore a significant view among lawmakers that the president shouldn't act alone in starting such a potentially massive conflict. They're trying to reclaim Congress's constitutional role.
But within the Republican Party specifically, there's a pretty clear ideological split on this issue, isn't there? A real divergence of views.
Oh, it's a profound divide. It really shows the evolving fault lines within the party itself. On one side, you have the staunch defense hawks, people like Senator Lindsey Graham. He openly stated he wants the U.S. to go all in to help Israel destroy their nuclear programs, including providing whatever bombs are needed. That's classic interventionism. But then on the other side, you have this growing anti-interventionist wing. Think of figures like the podcaster Tucker Carlson, arguing the U.S. should essentially drop Israel and let them fight their own wars, but not with America's backing. This camp prioritizes American domestic concerns, a more restrained foreign policy. And even Vice President J.D. Vance, a prominent figure, has acknowledged the concerns about foreign entanglement, hinting at this shift away from traditional interventionism. It truly highlights a deep internal division. And for the current administration, trying to balance these competing viewpoints while crafting a coherent policy, well, that's been a significant and ongoing challenge, to say the least.
So you might be asking yourself, listener, why this immediate urgency for Israel? Why push so hard right now?
Yeah, what's really compelling here is that Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been warning for over a decade that a military assault on Iran's nuclear program was necessary. This isn't new from him. Now, American intelligence, while they haven't apparently seen a huge breakthrough in Iran actively building a weapon, they did assess that Netanyahu was preparing for an expansive attack, maybe with or without U.S. participation. Israel claims they have new intelligence showing an imminent threat, justifying what they call preemptive action. And they're particularly concerned, it seems, that Iran is rapidly building up its ballistic missile capabilities for retaliation, which obviously raises the stakes considerably for them. This perceived immediacy fuels Israel's consistent pressure on the U.S.
Okay, what about Iran's actual nuclear timeline, according to intelligence assessments? How close are they really to achieving a weapon?
Well, U.S. intelligence agencies have pretty consistently concluded that Iran was close to being able to make a nuclear weapon, meaning having the technical capability and enough material. But critically, they hadn't yet made the political decision whether to actually do so. They've assessed that if Iran were to decide to go for it, they'd likely be less than a year away from having enough fissile material for a bomb. And something for you to consider, a crude, more basic nuclear bomb could possibly be constructed even more quickly. That presents a different kind of, perhaps more immediate threat. The challenge for intelligence isn't just tracking the material, it's discerning that crucial political intent.
And here's a really critical point, one that's often debated. Some U.S. officials are apparently skeptical of Israel's aggressive campaign. They suggest it might have already, perhaps inadvertently, convinced Tehran that the only way to prevent future attacks or even ensure its own survival would be to develop a full nuclear deterrent, the exact opposite of the intended effect.
Right. And this raises a profoundly important, almost paradoxical question for policymakers. If Iran is likely to pursue a nuclear weapon no matter what happens now, does that, ironically, increase the pressure on the U.S. to strike preemptively, to stop them before they cross the threshold? Rosemary Kalanick, she's the director of the Middle East program at Defense Priorities, offers a really sobering warning on this point. She stressed that while Israel's initial strike might have given Iran an incentive to develop a nuclear weapon, that incentive would multiply dramatically if the United States joins the war. She underscored the immense difficulty of pulling back once involved, stating quite bluntly, "Once you get involved, man, it's really hard to step back." This highlights a potential dangerous cycle where efforts to prevent proliferation could actually end up accelerating it. It's a real dilemma.
So, as we've explored, the situation is just incredibly complex. You're balancing the urgent demands of an ally, Israel, with these profound geopolitical risks. You've got deep internal political divisions back in the U.S., and the very real, frightening threat of an even wider conflict engulfing the region, or even beyond. Every decision here feels like a high-stakes gamble.
It really does.
And this leads us to a critical question, maybe the central question for you to consider. In a world where information spreads so rapidly, where conflicts can escalate almost instantaneously, how do leaders truly weigh the desire for diplomatic solutions against the perceived need for decisive military action? Especially when the consequences, intended or not, could reverberate globally for years, maybe decades to come. It's the defining balance of our era, perhaps.
So this is it for today. The situation is rapidly evolving, as you can tell, and we will certainly try to keep you updated. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media. Our handle is 8digitalco. See you in the next podcast. Keep listening.